So double exposure, how do you do this? All right, so firstly, you need two images. One portrait, it's good to have a sort of silhouette, right? And one background image. Now, I suggest that you're using Adobe Bridge when you import your photos, and then that way you can sort of rate them and sort them. And then within Adobe Bridge, you can just double click on the image to open it up. So this is going to be my image, my portrait image, and this is going to be my background. And from that, I will go and do this. So first thing you want to do is you, again, want to make sure you have a clean, solid background. That means if there's something in the background, you can use the clone tool and Alt-click to define the source, and you can clone out if you have things in your background. Another thing that's useful to do is you can dodge, which is lighten up your background. Remember, you can change if you're targeting shadows, midtones, highlights, and the strength of the exposure. So this is something that might be nice to do in order to just sort of clean up your background if there's some spots that are a little bit darker, because you're going to be selecting your background, and if it's all one solid color, it will make your life a lot easier. So that is something else you can do. Remember, the more solid your background is, the easier your life will be. Remember, cloning, dodging, these can help. So we want to select just the figure. Now there's lots of selection tools, and if you don't remember how to use these, I recommend that you go watch the selection tutorial again. But because my background is pretty much one consistent color, I'm going to select my background and get any pieces with holding down Shift and unclicking, or holding down Alt and clicking if I've selected something that I don't want to select. So I'm going to select the inverse. So this is Shift Command I, right here, Shift Command I. This selects the inverse. So I've selected just my figure. Now you can Command C, copy that, and just paste it into another layer. So now we want to go back to our background, and we want to go into Fill It. So we go Edit, Fill. We're going to make sure that we're using white. So we want to fill it with white. So we're just filling in our background. So now we've targeted our figure, and there's our figure, and our background is all in white. Now what you should be doing right now is going File, Save As, and saving your PSD or your Photoshop file. So since I've done some work, it will pop up as Photoshop, and you want to be saving this as your name, double exposure, and save. And I already have one copy, so I'm going to just call this 2. All right, so you want to be saving as you go along because you don't want to be losing your work. All right, so now that you've targeted your background, you have it all set up, now you need to open up your background layer. This is going to be my background. I'm going to select all, copy it, and paste it right on top. Now if it ends up not being on top, I just drag it to the top, and here it is. One thing you might want to do is you can think about if you want to transform, if this is a little big, you can make it smaller. That is up to you. So now I have my background, but my background's on top, and we'll see why that happens like such. All right, so your background's on top of your figure layer. Where you're gonna be is you're gonna be on your background layer, the one that will be showing up here. You're going to Command click, right, on the figure. So make sure you're not Command clicking on the layer, right, because then that will select both layers. So just make sure that when you're on your background layer, you're Command clicking on the thumbnail, right? And that will give you the outline of just the figure. What you'll do next is you'll add a layer mask, and you'll just click right here, and you'll have your layer mask where all that is showing is your silhouette. All right? Now, here you can unclick the link, make sure you selected your background layer, and then you'll be able to move it independently. All All right, so if you don't unclick it, you'll notice you're moving the whole entire layer, but you want to just be making sure that you're on the right layer, you're on the thumbnail for the background, so that you can actually just move the background within that mask. So now we want just another copy of your background of your portrait. So Command J to make a copy. We bring this to the very top. Well, next we'll go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate, and that basically gives you a black and white layer. We'll change the blending mode to multiply, and then you can start to see the background underneath it. So now we can add a mask to this layer, and we can continue manipulating and maybe moving, like, you know what, this was too much, maybe I want it over here. And we can delete out some of these details using our brush. And I suggest you use a nice soft brush. Remember, black deletes out, so I can delete out, maybe I don't want to see my shirt, the details of my shirt, so I delete that out. And so you can choose how you want to do that, and if maybe you want to change the opacity, like maybe I completely want to get rid of my shirt, or maybe I want to have a lower opacity and I just want to get rid of a little bit of those details. Then you change your opacity to 70%, so 70, because you want really nice and subtle features. And again, you can play around with some of these, but this is just sort of an idea of how to do it. Then you want to use the eyedropper tool, okay? And that you can just click eye, and there's the eyedropper tool, and you want to pull one of the colors. So I'm going to get this color right here. This one. Make sure you're on the right layer. Make sure you're on the background layer, and I want to get one of these background layer colors. And then double click on that thumbnail, and you want it just to be a bit lighter and less bright. And then you want to actually fill the background with, make sure it is the foreground color. So now you've filled that background in. These are a couple extra steps that you can do, and one of them is to duplicate your background, and you can just delete the layer mask. So you can duplicate the background layer, or you can just copy it again and paste it in. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be making sort of a vignette. So you're going to go to Filter, and you're going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and make it 200. So it'll probably be 5 when you go there, but you want to make it 200 because you want it really nice and blurred. Then you're going to add a mask, and again, this is a lot of masking that we're doing. And you're going to paint out really softly your figure. So I'm going to like paint that out. I just paint that out. And remember, if I think that the edges are too hard, then I can always go back in and soften those edges. So I don't particularly like this halo effect too much, right? So what I can do is then, once I paint this out, I can switch this to white, and I can change the opacity to maybe 45, and then I can just paint back in the edges. So that's where you can play around with things and, you know, see what you want to do. Now you can just reduce the opacity of this layer. Just make sure you're on this layer, and you can just reduce this opacity to kind of make it a little bit softer. And again, I've reduced the opacity of this one because I like the look of sort of a little bit more subtle, but you know, you can play around with how much you're showing and how much you're not showing, and how strong you want that background figure to be. The very last thing that you can do is add an adjustments layer. And here are your layers that are you're able to adjust. So here we're going to go into, and I think we should add a level. So I just want to maybe bring up some of those darks a little bit and bring down some of those midtones, or bring them up. So here you can play with using those layers. So that is how you go about doing this, and you can always go in later and decide that you want to actually crop this. So I might decide later on that I actually want to crop this image because I got rid of so much of the background, or I wanted to add more to it, and that's something else you can do. As you're working, you want to make sure you save, and the copy that you want to actually hand in is the file save as. Make sure you're saving it as a JPEG. Format, JPEG, save. And that is double exposure.